Data viewers, the Colonel speaking to you live from the Grange, British Imperial YouTube Broadcasting. To Columbia DB185, what would Mr Gladstone say to that? Played by and sung by Norman Long, entertainer at the piano. Well, that's what he calls himself. Here we go.
Before the days of clapper votes, stamped eggs or smoke abatement, a certain famous statesman made a certain famous statement. What Gladstone said I've never learned, if it were rude or pleasant, and anyway we are more concerned with questions of the present. So what would Mr Gladstone say if he were kicking around today? Would he smile or would he frown to see the country upside down? Upon a Christmas morning, would he think it very shocking to see a flapper on a pillion round the corner rocking? If he saw everything she had that morning in her stocking, I wonder what he'd have to say to that. The theatre in Gladstone's time was very goody-goody. Today the language in our plays would give him cause for study. If he heard a perfect lady use a word that rhymes with muddy, I wonder what he'd have to say to that. Oh, what would Mr Gladstone say to that? When Gladstone said his famous say, the Queen was good Victoria, the dame who holds the sway today is known as dreadful Dora. He'd see a change in Parliament, no Liberals on the benches. He'd hear a lot of rowdy Scots and several shingled ladies. So what would Mr Gladstone say, sitting in Parliament today? Would he grin or would he glower to see the Labourites in power? He'd see the women everywhere as bosses and dictators, push their way in everything but won't push perambulators. So future generations will be bred in incubators. I wonder what he'd have to say to that. Now we've slot machines for everything, from nuts to first editions. Divorce machines will soon cut out the lawyers and petitions. Just drop a shilling in and get divorced in 8 positions. I wonder what he'd have to say to that. Oh, what would Mr Gladstone say to that? Now, Mr Gladstone said a lot, his bottom jaw was tireless, and yet he never spoke upon the gramophone or wireless. And though he starred at Westminster, today he'd meet his master in either Ellen Wilkinson or else in Lady Astor. And what would Mr Gladstone say if he were listening in today? Would he say the music's grand or that the talk should all be banned? If he saw a modern villa called the chalet or the shack, with no foundations and a bath and lots of bric-a-brac, with a motor at the front door and a broker at the back, I wonder what he'd have to say to that. America, he'd see, is one big canning exhibition. They get canned music with their films, canned talk and canned nutrition. They even will get canned themselves in spite of prohibition. I wonder what he'd have to say to that. He'd see the girls of business with their lipstick and their hustle. He'd never see a crinoline, he'd never see a bustle. And where he saw a lot of lace, he'd see a massive muscle. I wonder what he'd have to say to that. Oh, what would Mr Gladstone say to that?
Well, superb viewers, that was rather amusing. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you and goodbye.